We are live.
Welcome to everything you need to know about electric vehicles. Welcome, participants. There are a few here in the audience, and everyone out there watching on YouTube, thanks for showing up. Hopefully we're going to learn a lot and have some fun. I really want to thank the panelists for showing up. Some came a great distance, and I'm really grateful to that. I also want to thank Samantha Klein, who's the environmental analyst for the town of East Hampton's Natural Resources Department, and Gordian Raki, who's also in the audience, runs Energize East Hampton. Both of them really are behind putting this gathering, this information session together. I need to cover a little housekeeping. The point of this discussion is to answer questions about electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids from those of you who are watching. You know, how, when, how much, is it the right thing for you to do? You know, all those questions. America's transportation fleet is undoubtedly going electric. In a decade, whether on roads or water or even snow, we will be doing it in electric vehicles. This is going to be cleaner and more efficient, less expensive, quieter, and user-friendly. We're part of this transition. In fact, we're in the middle of it, or maybe just at the beginning. The point of this afternoon is for you and me to learn as much as we can. So, it's going to be a little bit of a free-flowing conversation, guided by me, members of the panel, but I hope mostly by the audience. Those of you in the audience with questions are going to come at us from two different places. There are those of you on YouTube, and we'd like you to put your questions in the comment section underneath the YouTube video link that you're watching, and Samantha will see those questions and bring them to us. If you're in the audience, and now we just had a few more people, which is exciting. If you have a question, raise your hand or stomp your feet or something. Our panel today is composed of local EV owners and users and experts. They're going to bring us up to date on the rollout of EVs in New York, tax credits and rebates available to us, and the rollout of charging stations, and all of the questions that we have around finding the right vehicle, how to operate it, how to maintain it. So before I ask the panelists to introduce themselves, I want to introduce Kate Rogers. She's a member of the East Hampton Town Board. She's sitting right here. She's the liaison of the board to from the Environment and the Energy and Sustainability Committee, and she's leading East Hampton's charge for clean energy. So, Kate, will you take a few minutes to say hi?
Yes, let me say a few words. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone who's participating today, for taking the time out on this incredibly important topic. I think it's great. Anybody that's tuned in and folks that are here in the audience that are here today to find out more about electric vehicles. You are already, by doing so, making an important step for both yourself, your family, and the planet. Owning an electric car will give you freedom from the fluctuations of gas prices, and we see how that's going, and the uncertainty of supply chain in trying to get oil around the world. Your bottom line will benefit as much as the planet, and that's certainly a win-win. I leased my first EV in 2017. It was the Bmw I3. Its range was a whopping 100 miles. That was as long as you didn't turn on the air conditioning, the radio, or anything else at the time. But it was fast, and it was quiet, and it felt great to drive right by the gas stations. It charged overnight at my house and a 110-volt plug-in cord. It was great. It took overnight, but the town at the town hall installed EV charging stations at the time, and that made it great when I came in to do business at town hall to have my car ready to go when I left. Honestly, though, as the range could drop rapidly depending on accessory use and even driving style, it was great as a local car, but beyond that, it was not a car I felt I could trust for longer drives. Let's fast forward to today. It's only a few years, and the improvements are staggering. I just ordered a 2022 Volkswagen ID4 last December, and although it is delayed as gas-powered cars are, it has now left the factory, and I'm waiting for delivery in either August or September, with a range now of a staggering 275 miles and a fast charge time of 70 minutes and 10 minutes with a level 2 charger. I now feel it'll be great everyday car without limitations of range. So now, with such instability of gas and oil prices and supply, if you are not concerned with all the positives of owning an EV for our sustainable future, certainly saving as much money as possible is now a great motivating factor as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. So introductions. My name is Biddle Duke. I live in Springs. I'm a journalist. I'm a father and a husband, and I own 2 internal combustion cars. So I'm a perfect candidate for this discussion. I think I'm going to start this way. Beth Fatani came all the way from Huntington, and I'd be curious to know what kind of vehicle she got here in. So Beth, why don't you start and we'll move in this direction.
Hi, I'm Beth Fatani with the Drive Electric Coalition of Long Island, and I came here in a Bmw i3. I love it.
Hi, I'm Dan Yavari. I'm also with Drive Electric Long Island. I'm an electrical engineer, and I came here in a Tesla Model Y.
I'm Samantha Klein. I'm an environmental analyst for the town of East Hampton in the Natural Resources Department. I work closely with the Energy and Sustainability Committee as well as the Coastal Assessment Resiliency Planning Committee. For work, we have a Nissan Leaf, but personally, I own a pickup truck.
I'm Lena DeBori. I'm a member of the Energy and Sustainability Committee. I also co-founded Climate Change Resources, which is a place to go to find out pretty much anything about climate change. I bought a Tesla 2 years ago, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment.
Jason, then Len, and then Francesca.
Hi, good afternoon. Jason Zimbler. I'm a project manager at NYSERDA on the transportation team. NYSERDA is the state energy office. The acronym, the long-winded acronym is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. I work on the electric vehicle portfolio. I manage charging station incentive programs and EV outreach and education efforts. Thank you.
Len.
Okay, yes, I'm Len Green, and I'm a very happy owner of a 2020 Chevy Bolt, which I'm quite happy to own right now when I see the price of gas, and I'm very pleased every time I drive by a gas station.
Francesca.
I'm Francesca Rhiannon. I'm also a member, along with Lena and Biddle, of the East Hampton Town Energy and Sustainability Advisory Committee. I'm also the co-chair of the Long Island chapter of the Climate Reality Project, which was a global organization begun by Al Gore. And I am the proud owner of a 2019 Nissan Leaf Plus, which I really love, and I'll tell you more about it later on.
Great, thank you all. There are, well, everyone here, I think, maybe except for Sam and her pickup truck and me, have experiences in buying, going through the process of choosing and dealing with owning an electric vehicle. But I think I want to start with Lena. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your story and where you ended up and why.
Okay, so I've never paid more than $9,000 for a car. I never bought a new car in my life. I bought a Tesla 2 years ago, and I bought it because, fortunately, 6 years ago, somebody had encouraged me to buy some Tesla stock, and I did, and it split 5 ways, and it increased, and it was phenomenal. And consequently, the Tesla that I paid $48,000 for was actually free. I could have bought a number of Teslas with the increase in my stock. I need to say that I bought it because my 2004 car was ready to die, costing too much money for me. And I think a great many people will probably consider a new car when their old car needs replacing. I just urge you to consider now an EV. I have never been in love with a car before. I need to tell you that I'm in love with my car in a way that I've almost never been in love with a man before. It is strong, it is silent, it goes from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and if I don't want it to go fast, it goes slow. So I know that that's a little odd in the way of speaking about a car, but it anticipates my every move. I don't know how many people can say that of their partners. And not only does it anticipate your move, but it does exactly what you want it to do. So I've driven this car now to Washington, D.C. I've taken it to Maine. I take it everywhere. I think one of the things that Tesla did, because it has no dealers, and because it doesn't do any advertising, is put its money into charging stations. And they did this very early on, and they did it because they knew that range anxiety was going to be the biggest problem for people. And so they wanted to overcome that obstacle right from the beginning. I've got 340 miles available on my car. It urges you only to load it to 80%, so mine is at 280. But that can take me quite a distance. I think I've said enough for now.
Thanks, Lena. So Lena is someone who you didn't go into the market with an open mind. You went into the market to buy. You were
in love.
Tesla bound.
I was. I had read the autobiography. That's why I bought the stock in the first place. And it seemed only fair that if the stock had given me the money to buy the car, I should buy that Tesla. I do have, I must say, slightly different feelings about Elon these days, but it doesn't change the feelings I have about the car.
So if one were to enter the market, say the way I would right now, not having any preconceived notions about what kind of car I was going to buy, how would I do that, Dan? And what's the process?
Well, the first thing would be an internet search for all the available EVs, and there's over a dozen available EVs, and then decide what your mission is. Lena was mentioning she has 350 miles of range. Now, typically, most people use about 40 to 50 miles, right, a day. So you don't really need that kind of range if you're just going to use it around town and just simple commuting. So you could look at much different cars. But if you needed, if I'm about to drive down to Florida, so I too needed a car with over 300 miles range, just so you stop less often. Mm-hmm. So it's all about mission.
So we've heard so much about supply problems. Can I go out now and buy a car off a lot, an electric vehicle off a lot? Are they available?
I don't think you can buy any car off the lot. It's tough. It really is tough. I mean, for a while there, and I think it might still be, that used cars are selling for more than they were when somebody bought them. The supply chain, I'm in the semiconductor industry, which is the heart of the supply chain problem. It's tough. I don't want to speak for my company, but I know that we don't really see any relief until 2023. It's just, they can't get parts.
So if someone is in the market to buy an electric, and I want to back up for a minute in a second about plug-in hybrids, if someone were in the market for an electric or a plug-in hybrid, they'd actually have to get their name in on some.
Yeah, go most
reservation.
Most of the companies have an online reservation system, or I haven't seen anything that you have to go to a dealer for. You can just go. I know Volkswagen, which who said they had an ID4? I love the ID4. Oh, congratulations! It's an awesome car. And you probably went online, right? Yeah. So even they have dealerships, and they have a whole. Most of these, you just go online and get in line.
Okay. So there's just so much to unpack here, right? But I want to just back up and so first things first, like electric, plug-in hybrid. Electric, plug-in hybrid. Who's best equipped to handle that question? Beth, you want to?
Oh, yeah, sure, if you can pass it to me.
I mean, why would I pick electric if I can have the backup of a combustion engine
Well-
if I run into a problem with charging?
Well, there's a number of reasons. One is, do you care about the environment? I mean, that's kind of one of the that's one of the many fundamental reasons. You don't really want to keep pumping carbon into the atmosphere. A hybrid pumps carbon into the atmosphere. It still has a gasoline engine, you're still running it. Now, the benefit, I don't want to say just negative, the benefit of a plug-in hybrid is that if you run out of range and you want to go further, you simply go to a gas station and get more gas, right? And that is a very easy, quick thing. Within 5 minutes, you're in and out of the gas station. Now, with an EV, a BEV, a battery electric vehicle, it takes about a half an hour to 40 minutes to get about 80% of the charge. That's with DC fast charging. So you're gonna, which, by the way, as an older guy, I appreciate. I hit the bathroom, I get a bite to eat, I have to maintain this figure. Yeah, so I don't have a problem with that at all, but many people do. They just want to get where they're going and they want to do it quick.
Can I just jump in and say a couple of things on that subject? If you buy a hybrid, you're basically paying for the 2,000 parts that a normal car would have, a gas-fueled car, plus the parts that an EV car has, which are very few. So it's I think it was created as a transitional car. It was created as a car that would cause people to not have the concerns they had about range anxiety, which they will cease to have once there are more charging stations available everywhere. I mean, Tesla has done that incredibly well, but that doesn't mean that universal charging stations for other cars are quite as available as they are for the Tesla. So, but the idea of paying for, not to mention maintenance, I would just point out that I have not had a maintenance issue with the Tesla for 2 years. A week ago, I couldn't open what they call a frunk, which is the front trunk of the car. And 2 days later, somebody came from Up Island, to fix that. And they came to my house, they fixed it, they left, they had a glass of water, and that was that. So, you know, there are no maintenance issues, basically, with an EV, and that's a huge asset.
So
Pardon me
we
for
are
one
going to get
second.
into
Excuse me?
maintenance issues, charging, environmental stuff, but I want to
Pardon me,
stay
Biddle?
on. Yep.
Biddle, we do have a question from Francesca.
Okay,
We have a
great.
comment from Francesca. I'm going to cut to her.
Yep.
If we're on buying, I'll just say, for me, it was very easy. I actually bought the car off the lot in 2019. But one advantage with Nissan, and I know Nissan is, isn't the coolest one, but I mean, I love the room that the car has, and also I love the safety of it. It hasn't had any fires. But one really nice thing about the Nissan is Nissan dealerships all have fast chargers, and they let you charge for free. And there are loads of them on the island, so that's an advantage. I mean, I'm sure, they're desperately looking for used cars too, to sell, so I know they're having supply problems as well.
I see.
But,
Len, what kind of car did you end up with, and what kind of car is it, and what was your process?
We ended up with a 2020 Chevy Bolt. And the process was kind of long. We did the usual things, looked on the internet, went around, tried driving some EVs. I guess I should talk first about how we decided that we were going to buy an EV. We had been driving a plain old hybrid, a 2011 Prius, and we were getting ready to move on. And we just decided we were finished with the internal combustion engines. And I think after our first test drive, we were clear that we were finished with internal combustion engines. They're just driving an electric vehicle is just a whole different world. And so having done a few test drives, we did a lot of internet searching on things, because I guess I should say that price is important to us. We've always been frugal about our automobiles. We never have spent anywhere near what I guess the average cost for an automobile is. So And another issue was that my wife was adamant about not buying a Tesla because of some labor issues. We're both union people. But we ended up looking at the Chevy Bolt, and after comparing it with other cars, we were quite happy with it because of the price, the comfort, and ever since we've been driving it, because of our driving habits, I plug it into a regular 110-volt charger at home, or plug at home, and let it charge because I don't drive a heck of a lot. I have a second level charger that would charge it faster, but I hardly ever use it. So yeah, the Chevy Bolt was the right price. It was comfortable, and it drives well enough for our taste. It's not as flashy or as, I guess, comfortable as a more expensive car, but it does the job for two senior citizens.
When you say that you like driving it, what does that mean exactly? What's so pleasant about driving an electric car?
It's just getting into it after driving for 60 almost 60 years, I guess. It's getting into a car that's quiet. And when you step on the accelerator, you don't have to hear the engine working to accelerate. You don't hear all that noise which is associated also with what you don't see, but you know is coming out of the tailpipe. It's a pleasure. It's zippy. And for what I guess would be considered an economical car, it handles very well. The pleasure is feeling like you're driving something that's just unlike what you've driven before. If you've never driven an electric vehicle.
I never have, so I look forward to it. Okay, so you look at range, you look at comfort, you look at cost, obviously. Those are all the decisions at the front end, but finally you end up with a car. What's the process look like? You buy it or you lease it? I mean, what do you do there? What are the choices? Does one buy or lease an electric car? And once you've made that decision, does someone show up and give you a special plug at your house to plug this thing in? I mean, thankfully, I'm actually speaking in layman's language terms because I have no idea how this whole process works. So you buy a car and they come over and they help you hook it up, or what? Maybe Dan, you could fill us in on that.
Okay, so like he was just saying, that you can typically with the car they give you this charger. It's actually called an EVSE. And because the charger is actually inside the car, and this is just a DC converter. But they give it to you, and it plugs into a 110 outlet. The issue, as he alluded to a little bit, is that it only provides about 4 miles, per hour back to the car. So 10 hours, you get 40 miles. So if you were doing a normal commute every day, that would be perfectly fine. But then you have an L2 charger, that's an L1, and then you have an L2 charger, which usually plugs into a 220 volt outlet, and this will give you about 40 miles per hour.
Who's paying for the L2, the faster chargers?
So the L2 charger you have to buy separately, you're right, and it's about $600, but PSEG Long Island gives you $500 back as a rebate. As a cash check rebate. So it really only costs you about $100. And there's a few varieties that some are $600, some are $650, some are $700. So, but the rebate is limited to $500. So, but yeah, and then you get an electrician to come in and put in a 220 outlet if you don't already have one, and that would probably be let's call it $1,000. But you get a tax benefit on that too. So.
And on the purchase of the car, are there tax credits or are there financial incentives to buy electric?
Do you want to hit this?
Yeah, sure. So New York State is actually offering a rebate of $2,000 for new or newly leased electric vehicles, and there's a federal tax credit of up to $7,500 for manufacturers that haven't run out on it. So I'm aware that there are 2 that already have. It's by manufacturer.
Are these rebates and credits, are they sunsetting, or is there other than the one that you just mentioned? It's by manufacturer.
Not that I'm aware of,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Until the money runs out.
PSE&G thing, is that sunsetting, or?
I think, I know that it's going from $500 this year to, I think, $400 next year. And also the $7,500 federal tax credit is also going to go away. I'm not sure exactly what date that is, but they're talking about renewing it. And there's three car companies that no longer qualify for the 7,500, and that would be Tesla, Chevy, and then after that is Toyota, which just happened now.
Okay. There are 3 levels of chargers, right? There's the first one you mentioned, which is
L1,
very
L2, and
which is
L3.
relatively slow. Then there's the second one. Is the super level 3? It's called.
Yeah.
Is the level 3 charger? Can you install that at home, or is that only available?
No, you need a 480 volt source.
Okay.
It's definitely just commercial.
Okay. Jason, I haven't called on you. Do you want to jump in here? Is there anything striking is there something here that you want to participate in?
The panelists have given excellent information. The one thing I can say about the state rebate, we've had a lot of success with seeing the market develop as a result of the somewhat modest rebate. It's up to $2,000 based on the battery range of the vehicle, and that has pushed sales in a nice way in New York. We're now over 100,000 electric vehicles on the road out of a total vehicle stock of about 10 million. So we're a little north of 1%. But the trailing 6-month purchases of EVs are somewhere around 7%. So the flow is great. The stock is catching up, and the rebate has been part of why that has been successful. I think the next frontier for the rebate and for the market in general is to kind of move beyond early adopters and the technologically bold. The rebate is structured just for new vehicles, and EVs have had a cost premium, and so they've really been more available to higher income parts of the population. We're hoping to over time adapt the rebate to be able to function for more of income levels, and that might be there are no commitments yet, but things that we're looking for in order to be able to make the rebate available more broadly, and EVs more broadly, is to make it available for used vehicles, or to have ways in which we can assess means testing or income, and those are the kinds of things that are being looked at in order to ensure that participation is more wide.
Interesting, the 10 million figure. That's for New York State. 10 million, is that non-commercial vehicles, or does that include some commercial vehicles? Or?
That's all vehicles in New York.
Okay, so what's like in 10 years, what are the numbers going to look like if you were to look in a crystal ball?
Well, we are now under a law that will that sets a target, and now regulations are being spun up to support it, of 100% ZEV sales, zero-emission vehicle sales by 2035. So, we're already in model year 2023, 2024. So we're really about 10 years away from that being the case, that no combustion vehicles will be sold in New York. There are interim targets for the commitments that we're making. There's a 2030 target. I think it's in the neighborhood of 60% sales, 2/3 of the sales. And we are aligned with other states on this to be able to kind of bring force to that those regulations and bring market heft. So it is hard to say. There are so many macroeconomic effects and other really contextual challenges to that, between supply, between geopolitical. Cost of oil is going to have something to do with that, but there are definitely tailwinds here, and I believe that we'll probably be close to our target for sales by 2030, and that's going to lead to a virtuous cycle, because now with scale you're getting cheaper batteries, and then cheaper vehicles, the battery being the most expensive component.
Just want to check with Sam. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we actually seem to be naturally answering some of that.
I have a comment,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, just to piggyback on what he was saying about electric vehicles being expensive. Being an engineer for 40 years and watching all of these high-tech products coming out to market, that's the way it always is, right? When you first, when I say you, probably most of you don't even remember this, but I remember my first VCR was like $2,000. My first computer was thousands. My first flat screen TV was $12,000. This is what happens. You have a new technology that comes out and it's expensive. Why? Because they have to amortize all of the research and development that went in to create the product. Once that's all, once we get past that hump, these cars are going to be no more expensive than any car that you know now. In fact, I have to applaud GM, because GM just announced that their 2023 Chevy Bolt starts at $27,000. Now, the first BEV that I ever owned was a Chevy Bolt, and I paid almost $39,000 for it. Now, it's the same car is coming out at $27,000. So this is the way it's going to evolve.
Okay, so you're on a little bit of a roll down.
Can I put an exclamation point on
Sure.
the cost effectiveness?
Yeah, I was going to just say, let's just keep going on the costs, because I think that's an interesting thread to pull.
Yeah, I think, just having the car, so one thing is purchasing the car, but the other thing is maintaining the car and retaining the car. I keep cars for, I don't know, 10, 15 years pretty much in my lifetime. And my car, because it's the EV and because there's so few parts involved, there's so little maintenance involved. So you have very little expense as you retain your car as time goes forward. And just using electricity to fuel your car is also vastly less expensive than gasoline to fuel your car. For example, my husband has a Subaru, which he's not ready to give up yet, and it runs him about 15 cents, I think, I figured out, and my car runs about 8 cents a mile. So I'm running...
It's 15 cents, 8 cents a mile, or...
A mile,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
right, a mile, yeah, exactly. So I'm running at about half the cost of his car, which of course is another advantage.
All right, is
Yeah,
there,
that's-
so either
Zoom
Beth or
panelists have a few
Jason or
questions.
an expert here, is there other data points around operating costs?
I have
Sure.
a comment.
Jump in. Yep.
Yeah, sure. My cost is really, really low. In fact, it's free because I have solar panels on my roof, and I produce more electricity than I use. So I basically just pay. I mean, sometimes I pay as much as $14 a month for my electric bill. Other times it's $12. I think the most expensive electric bill I've had since I've had solar is $15 for the month. On that, I charge my car as well as all the other electric appliances that I have. So unless I'm taking a long trip, I don't have any cost for fuel.
Got it.
And
Yeah.
I've done no maintenance either. I mean, I actually had to have my radio repaired, but that's the only thing.
There's no maintenance. Sorry.
Leonard is also going to
For
hop in
idiots
too.
like me, why is there no maintenance? How is that even possible?
There are no parts?
Fewer moving parts.
Yeah.
Hi, Biddle. Leonard's
jump
going to
in.
hop in.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to, I've been preempted on this. I was just going to say that back to the cost issue, I find it astounding that Chevy has dropped the cost of the car 20% since I bought it. I mean, it was, I think, $39,000 was the asking cost when I bought mine. It's going to be, as just pointed out, $27,000 for the next Chevy Bolt. I mean, I think that's just astounding. It's clear that they're looking for a greater share of the market in terms of people buying EVs. I also want to pick up on what we were just talking about, I too have solar panels on the roof. My last bill, I think, was something like $16, and I get my charging essentially, charging of the vehicle for free. So, I mean, I think in tandem with the solar panels, the cost of having this car is negligible. So, and I'd like to know what other kind of car you can buy these days for around $28,000. That's that gets you around for next to nothing if you have solar panels, or very little if you're simply paying for your electric bills.
So even if someone doesn't have solar, electric rates are relatively high on Long Island. We still come out ahead on operating costs?
Yeah,
Yeah, I pay maybe $20 or $30 more per month with the electric being, charging the car.
Yeah.
Oh, you do, okay.
At the most.
And you don't have solar, or, you just plug
No,
it?
I do community solar.
Okay.
To give
And my 8 cents was for a fast charger. So
Yeah.
it's going to be much cheaper for me to actually, fuel that car from home.
Right.
Yeah, so I just want to give everybody an analogy or a comparison that everyone could grab. There's a site, U.S. Department of Energy, that tells you national averages of what electric costs, and they create what's called an e-gallon. It's an equivalent gallon of electricity
Yeah.
compared to a gallon of gas. And what they say nationally average is it's only $1.30. How would you love to go to a gas station and buy gas at $1.30? And I got even better news for you. Someone said electric rates on Long Island are all over the place, and that's true. I think the most you're going to pay on Long Island is about $1.30. And now PSE&G LI has just put in a new time of use rate plan where overnight is ridiculously low, and it's only going to cost you about 75 cents for an equivalent gallon of electricity.
Okay. I want to get into the idea, the sort of, the environmental impacts of owning an electric car. But before we do, we were going to kick this off with a little video. And of course, I'm going to turn 60 in November, so my memory is failing me, and I forgot to trigger that video at the beginning. So let's watch this humorous video. It's a minute long. It's just fun, but it does get into the environmental impacts of combustion engines. Can we roll that one?
What if everything ran on gas? Then again, what if everything didn't? The 100% electric, zero-gas Nissan Leaf. Innovation for the planet. Innovation for all.
We were not paid by Nissan to do that. I apologize for the shameless plug of Nissan, but anyway, PSE&G uses dirty energy to fuel your cars, Dan.
Yes.
Mostly natural gas, not too much oil, no coal.
Natural gas, nuclear are the biggest. Some hydropower.
But let me say this. Making electricity with coal is the dirtiest process you can use to make electricity, and yet an EV that's running on electricity made by 100% coal is 3 times as ecologically friendly as a gas car. So the gas car will pollute 3 times more than an EV running on coal. This is one of the, being in the group we're in, we get this all the time, where people think, oh, it's creating, carbon anyway. No, it's not.
Can I also point out that if you run your car on electricity, the potential for clean energy to enter that electrical grid is there. If you run your car on gasoline, there is no possibility for any clean energy to enter that stream of energy. So that's a crucial matter. And I think what you were referring to was the exhaust that exists, even if you have a fuel-energized car, whereas when you have an electric car, even if you're in West Virginia, where 83% of your electrical energy comes from coal, you still aren't creating fumes. That's an advantage.
It's my understanding, I think this came from a conversation I was having earlier with you, Dan, that making an electric building, manufacturing an electric car actually has a bigger carbon footprint than building an internal combustion engine car or vehicle. So, again.
Yeah. So it is, you create the least amount of carbon when you create an internal combustion engine car. A little ironic, but that's true. You make the most dirtiest process is making a hybrid, because you not only have the engine, but you also have the batteries. And then you have the EV, which is there in the middle, which is just electric. But the amount of carbon and pollution that it creates during the manufacturing process is made up within the very first year. They say, again, the Department of Energy says that people commute, or people use their cars roughly 14,000 miles per year. And the same source says that like 14,500 miles is where the break-even point comes, where an EV has now come up to parity with a gas guzzler. And then after that, it's all, rainbows and unicorns.
So I want to ask you about batteries, and I think either Jason or Beth or Dan can tell me a little bit about the longevity of these batteries and sort of the environmental impacts of these batteries. And then we'll get into range, which is a big issue. Charging stations, how you manage your life with an electric vehicle if you want to actually drive more than your usual 20 or 30 miles around town. But who's best equipped to talk about batteries? Because batteries are a pollutant, it seems to me. Dan is the one, not
unless someone there. So batteries will last quite a while. First, let's talk about recycling batteries. One of the big misconceptions is all of our landfills are going to be filled with these lithium-ion batteries from cars. That's not true at all. There's already a dozen or more recycling companies that are, taking these batteries and recycling them. But, after the battery is done in the car, that's not even the end of the life of the battery. The battery the battery's life is used up a little bit, but it's still fine for energy storage. So for commercial storage, or for these battery walls that you see in houses, those batteries are still fine for that. So they have another life after that. And then finally, when the battery is completely gone, the life of it is over, it gets pulled apart, and all the materials get recycled. So that's a viable business. These things are expensive, and there are companies that do it. I always, when anyone ever asks me about this, I always talk about cell phones. One of the things that really irks me is that everyone just throws their cell phone in the garbage, and nobody ever worries about that lithium-ion battery. That's what you should worry about, not EVs.
We have a question from Zoom. We have a question from Zoom.
Great.
Leonard?
Oh, yes. My question, I'm very interested in this idea that after their batteries are no longer functional for automobiles, they're useful or can be used as house batteries, or batteries for backup batteries for houses and so on. Are there companies actually doing this now, or is this something that's in the future?
No, this is done now. So what happens, a car battery reaches its end of life. Well, actually, when the car battery reaches its end of life, it's not all the batteries that have gone bad. Only some of the batteries have gone bad. So there are companies that will take the EV battery and find those bad cells and replace them, and then sell a refurbished battery. And that is another form of repurposing, or it's not really repurposing, it's just getting a new life. But if that doesn't happen, if a car gets totaled in an accident or something and the battery pack has been harmed physically some way, all of those batteries are recovered and tested, and then the ones that are good, they go into power walls or just energy storage.
And that process, again, I just want to piggyback a little bit on what Len said. Even though we're early in adoption around electric vehicles, that process to repurpose and keep these batteries from going to landfills is in place?
Yeah, a lot of these battery recycling companies are startups because, like you said, the volume is not there, the economy of scale is not yet there, but they still do it. They're doing it now.
Okay.
Nothing's going into a landfill.
So
I had a 2003 Toyota Prius for 17 years before I had the i3. I never had to replace the battery, and it's still going. My friend bought it. He loves it.
Yeah, that's another really important point, is people think these batteries are going to wear out quickly. They're not. The federal government demands that EV manufacturers provide an 8-year, 100,000-mile warranty on these batteries. So they last, they're built high quality and they last a really long time. And then add on top of that the longevity of the motors. The motors have no reciprocating parts, there's no vibration, that's what makes driving an EV so beautiful. And they go 500,000, or they could go 500,000 miles. So these cars can last, if you take care of an EV, you could, in my humble opinion, you could probably get 1.5 to 2 times the life out of an EV that you could taking care exactly the same way an ICE vehicle.
Doesn't sound like it. Well, the point that's been made is there's not a lot of taking care.
No. Well,
it seems to me,
you still have suspension issues, so if something goes wrong, you want to fix that. Also, you have your interior, you want to make sure that's not aging too fast, and then also the exterior.
So,
could I ask Dan a question?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
To follow up, let's say it was over the 8 years. You want to keep your car for longer. Can you replace batteries in an EV?
Yes. Yeah. And the price of the batteries keep coming down. Like when I first bought my Tesla, I had looked into, well, how much would it cost to replace a battery? And at that time, it was I think just under $18,000. And now it's 11.
And just as a distraction, there's a Vietnamese company called VinKind, which only makes its cars available in California so far, but you're basically subscribing for the battery. So they sell you the body of the car, and then they lease you whatever battery you need. So if you need, 150 miles because you're only going to be going around the neighborhood, then that's what you lease. And then when it turns out that you decide you want to travel to New York from California, you go back to VinKind and they replace the battery that you had with a battery that will allow you to have long range. So there are lots of things that are going to happen. They just haven't all happened yet.
I'm going to get into charging and range anxiety. Are there any questions coming from the crowd?
Yes, yeah.
Great.
So we have 22 people watching from YouTube, so thank you all for watching from a distance. Yeah, and they are chiming in on the conversation. So it looks like there might be interest in looping back to the tax incentives and benefits, as well as any grants. I know we had touched on that earlier. We had someone chime in here that their car dealer covered the cost of the federal rebate that had run out, and someone else is curious of any plans to improve or extend other grant opportunities, or if any of our owners here have taken advantage of those programs.
Beth?
I ended up not having to get the federal credit because I bought my i3 used, so I got it for half the price. So it's only for new vehicles. That's something people should be aware of. But I haven't heard of anything going away, so maybe someone else knows more about that.
The federal grant goes away when a company has sold 200,000 cars. So I didn't even in 2020 get the benefit of that $7,500 for my Tesla because they were already past that number. I think Toyota is coming up next to have hit its number, and yeah.
Nissan is getting close. I got the rebate, so I got a total of $9,500 between New York State and the federal credit. But I believe Nissan is thinking that 2023 is going to be the last year.
Dan, I think you have those figures off the top of your head. Could we restate for the audience, just with specificity, what the tax credits are and other sort of financial advantages of going electric again?
You wanna?
Yeah, well, the state gives a drive clean rebate of $2,000, and my friend from NYSERDA can add to that if he wants to, and it's $7,500 federal tax credit.
Okay.
And then it's also $500 from PSEG Long Island towards the charger if you wanted to put the level 2 charger at your house, which I did, and like Dan said, I paid about $150 for it after the rebate.
Okay.
And then you also have the incentive of time, if you go on time of use rates, so you'll pay fewer cents per kilowatt hour if you charge the car at night, and that helps to balance the grid. And I want to mention too, maybe the person from NYSERDA wants to add to this, but there are also like commercial level incentives, like for workplace chargers. There are incentives from NYSERDA for things like that. And the state overall is investing millions of dollars. In fact, I did some research. $700 million is being put into charging infrastructure by the state to help support that, because like we said, we have electric vehicle targets statewide. So on Long Island, in our region, they're targeting to have about 500 DC fast charger ports by 2025, and just over 4,000 level 2 public chargers. But again, I feel like it's a little bit of a fear. We were talking about range anxiety because you really charge at home all the time. Like, I've had the car for 2 years and only had to charge in public twice. And when you do that, by the way, I also wanted to point out, at least if you're not a Tesla driver, you have to become a member of like EVgo or Blink or ChargePoint. So these get tied to your credit card, and then you just swipe it and it unlocks the charging device that you put into the car, and that's how you pay for it, because that's another question I get too. So
if just on range anxiety, and anyone is welcome to just jump in on this question, but so most of your driving you do around. Oh, someone got a question? Go ahead. Yep, jump in.
Let's get the audience mic to that person.
Hi, my name is Michael Hansen. I live in Wainscott. I bought a Chevy Bolt last year. I'm also a Costco member, and they offered a $3,000 incentive on addition to the $2,000 state, and they even gave a tiny discount because it was the first time I purchased a Chevrolet. But my question is, and maybe this is for Chevrolet or for the federal government, this 250,000 item limit on the federal rebate, is that going to increase? Why does it stop at 250? I didn't receive that because they had already sold so many Bolts.
It stops at 200. Michael, and in the Build Back Better bill, which hasn't yet been passed by the federal government, there's a lot of subsidy issues in that bill, but we haven't passed it yet.
But so
also,
potentially there'll be another $7,500 incentive, federal tax incentive.
Well, the
it could be more than that. It could be $12,500. Joe Manchin kind of nixed that, but that doesn't mean. I don't know. He nixed it. It was going to be $12,500 for domestically produced vehicles, and he didn't want that. But I would urge anybody to call Gillibrand and Schumer this week, because this is when they're actually trying to revive Build Back Better, the climate parts of it. Call them and tell them that you want this passed, and this is the week to do it. It's really important. I just want to point out that there's another federal incentive, and that's a 30% tax rebate on the installment costs for an L2 charger at your home. So I got the $500 rebate, but I also got 30% off the cost of the electrician who had to install it.
It's good to hear there are more federal rebates coming in, and I can't wait to retroactively request my $12,000. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. So, Beth, you mentioned that you'd only had to charge away from your home twice over the last 2 years.
when you went upstate.
There, I travel a lot, and I've gone down to Washington D.C. a number of times because I have a goddaughter there, and I stop along the way. I'm on some major highway, and I pull into some. I mean, first of all, within the car, it tells you exactly. You tell it it's your destination, and it tells you where all the charging stations are on the way there. And it also preconditions your battery so that you charge faster when you get there. And I can fill up my car to 280 in about 25 minutes. And as was said earlier,
Is that with a level 2 or a level 3?
no, that's a fast charger.
That's a fast
All the Tesla chargers that are out there in the world are fast chargers that I
Okay.
am aware of in any case. So, I mean, it's a fabulous stop. I use the bathroom, of course, and sometimes I get myself something to eat. I can watch Netflix. There's a wonderful piece of the software that Tesla provides you with, which is to connect you to all kinds of fabulous entertainment. So you can stay fairly busy if you wish.
Is that the same experience with non-Tesla, with other vehicles? I mean, it's accessible,
Yeah.
Well, it's not that easy. I've had issues because there are two problems with the charging system. First of all, there are not enough of them, and so that's an issue. And it's hard to know, and a lot of them are out of order. Although I think that has gotten better. So if you have an app like the cards were pulled up there. For example, I have a number of the different apps, but I often use EVgo because I find I call them in advance. I mean, my car will tell me where the next charging station is also. A Nissan will do that. But I can call EVgo on the way and ask them if that charging station is A, in good repair, and B, is it in use? And they'll tell me whether it's in use or not. And so I can plan to go to a station which is most likely to be open by the time I get there because I'm calling just, maybe 10 minutes in advance. So there's a way to do it. It's really, not ready it's not as good as it should be because there should be far more charging stations. And those charging stations should also, there is a movement to convert gasoline stations to EV charging stations. That would make sense. And charging stations should be in places where you can kind of relax, not kind of be out in the boondocks. I think it's a very chaotic kind of, landscape right now with all these different companies. And I really think it would be good for policy. I don't know if anybody else has something to add on this.
Jason,
but
I see you. I see Jason nodding. Do you want to add something to this, Jason?
Yeah, there's a lot here. I think the first thing, this panel, I want to be thoughtful about how this is received because I live in this world of the programs, the grants, the incentives, the investments. But the commitments that we make and the programs that we launch don't result in chargers tomorrow. And this is about the EV experience and how people are considering making the jump. It's important to know that the investments are coming. It's important to know these bits of activity in the market. It's happening at the state level. It's happening at the federal level. It was $7.5 billion that came out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. That my team is involved in getting the plan together to roll out New York's portion of that. That's $170 million over the next few years for charging infrastructure, non-proprietary charging infrastructure on major corridors. One really important thing that I think is important to keep in mind when you're thinking about this is that the subset of owners, of EV owners, has disproportionately slanted towards single-family dwelling residents or those with garage access or dedicated parking. And as you know or intuit, New York has the highest percentage of MUD, multi-unit dwelling residents in the country, of any state, close to 50%. And MUD residents is a uniquely challenging problem to go electric because they have no dedicated parking. They're entirely reliant on public charging. that's not a barrier. That's just an extra challenge. It is a barrier. It's not. But it's surmountable, and that means that we absolutely must have charging of all speeds in the places where vehicles dwell. That's the curbside. That's the places where people shop. That's the places where people travel. The common destinations. It's more likely that the proliferation would be level 2 charging, and we're focusing the investments on that. But there is a strong use case. Obviously, people are talking about, the convenience of fast charging. How quickly? How much time am I going to spend in a charger? Where's that charger going to be? The fast charging has to be complementary with the level 2 charging. It's level 2 that's going to be in most people's homes. Level 1 is not so realistic for large batteries. The investments happening, the billions of dollars being spent on the state level and the federal level are going to result in a lot of fast charging on corridors, on highways, on state roads. The level 2 is going to show up through incentives like we run at work at employers. Workplace charging is a big part of getting people to feel comfortable with the idea of owning an EV. Maybe they don't have a garage or a charging point at home, but they go to work every day, and that if they can charge either for free or at a moderate cost to they pay that their employer, maybe that gives them the confidence to buy an EV. And so those things are all in play, and I may be happy to talk at length about the programs that we're involved with. But I'll yield there.
Yeah, no, that's all really interesting, and I think that you've actually pinpointed a piece that is the most worrisome for people making this move. And, it raises the question of, is now the right time to go electric? And I don't want to... Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say something about our experience of traveling with our car. Although we do most of our driving around town, there's no problem there. And then when we go into New York City, there's no problem there. We go in there a couple times a month and back. But recently we drove up to Ithaca, upstate. I think that's around 250 miles or so, a little more than that. And we had no problem. Before we made the trip, we just checked our apps. There are multiple apps available for planning a trip that will let you know where you can stop. And we planned our stops, and we checked out what was working before we arrived, because the apps will also let you know what the last experience was like when someone stopped there. You can actually look at the place, scope it out online, see what the pictures, videos of the place look like. And we had no problem at all driving up to Ithaca. We too are older, and we don't want to drive for 4 hours or 5 hours straight. We need to stop, and we chose where we would stop conveniently, and always found level 2 chargers that were working, and the trip was wholly enjoyable without any range anxiety.
So this is interesting. I think we're like 3, 5, 7, 8 EV owners, and no one has had a bad experience. No one's pulled up and been in a line of 6 people waiting to charge for 25 minutes and having to wait for 3 hours to get to the charger or anything like that.
Real.
No,
that's real. That inconvenience happens, and it's going to happen as this market is growing. There's the number of charging stations going in the ground is increasing, as is the vehicle sales, and so queuing is starting to happen on particularly big travel moments. Whether those are at late afternoons on the weekends when people are on their way back from places, or holidays. I've myself have been caught at a station and needed to wait, half an hour, 40 minutes for a stall to open up, to pull in, to then charge for myself for half an hour. It's inconvenient, but I think that the cohort, again, of early adopters is perhaps a little more patient with that, but that shouldn't be the experience for EVs, and that's not going to be a satisfactory experience that's going to lead people to go electric. It's going to be the continued investment in charging infrastructure that's going to provide enough stations that that supply exceeds demand. Of course, that's hard for the capital that's supporting the development of the charging stations. They want to see demand, match supply or exceed supply. but that's where state subsidy comes in and state and federal support to help get charging stations out in front of demand.
What's the experience here in East Hampton? How are we doing? Samantha, maybe you can talk about you're sort of at the receiving end of complaints and concerns in terms of charging stations and availability.
Yeah, and I did want to mention, I know Beth and Jason had talked earlier about the goals of zero-emission vehicles at the state level, and the town of East Hampton is taking advantage of that. We applied for and received a grant to install 10 charging stations with dual ports. So those will be made publicly available, and also it's to help encourage employees, and we adopted a policy at the recommendation of the Energy Sustainability Committee to replace all of our municipal fleet inventory with EVs, and so we want to make sure that we have the charging infrastructure in place to do all that. So the state level grants are definitely a huge asset to municipalities being able to get it done.
Are there holes in our network as far as that users have identified that we're trying to address?
So we have had, so currently at our parking lots, electric vehicles and non-electric are allowed to park in those spots. We actually haven't had an issue though of someone reporting that they needed that spot and that it wasn't open. We do have a dashboard that the charging stations are hooked up to, and we're able to see how many people are charging per month, how long they're charging for, general costs of that. So we do have a good amount of information, but I haven't received complaints of someone needing a charger and having to wait in line for it. Yeah.
Okay.
I should add too that it's because of the town that there are universal fast chargers in Montauk. Tesla wanted to put its chargers there, and until they agreed to do that together with universal charging stations, the town of East Hampton was reluctant to permit that. So the town has been very, I would say they've been very careful about being certain that when there's a possibility for universal charging stations, those are the ones that are available.
Jason, I wanted to ask you, and anyone else can jump in. Is there a question? Oh, great.
Can we get the microphone to him?
Hi, I'm Evan, Harris, and my question is specific. I'm wondering where the universal charging stations are presently in East Hampton town and how they can actually be accessed to charge your car.
Great. So the ones we were just discussing are in the back parking lot in Montauk behind Main Street. I want to say the address is Euclid. I should know it being I'm a Montauk resident, but yeah, so we have 8 Tesla charging stations there and 4 Universal in that parking lot. And then in our town hall parking lot currently, we have 3 that are dual ports, and we're putting 10 additional ones with that grant, you know, hopefully in the coming 2 years or so with engineering and everything else.
No fast chargers, though. Is that right?
For the new ones, we haven't set the work plan and, you know, the exact charging stations yet.
No, I'm saying there are no fast chargers.
The Electrify America ones are.
I believe the first batch
Okay.
she described were fast chargers.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I just will jump in to add the Electrify America, which is what Dan just referred to. When Volkswagen had its litigation some years back about diesel, they ended up paying a significant penalty, and that penalty, that money that the federal government received from that penalty has gone towards creating universal fast charging stations. So the ones that are in Montauk, for example, are as a result of that. And the reason that Tesla is so ahead in many ways is because they're paying for it. So where the town has gotten grants in order to put charging stations into the town here, but in the Tesla situations, because Tesla has paid for them, they haven't needed to wait for the town to get grants to do that. So that sort of explains really why there are more Tesla stations than there are universal ones so far.
Yeah, I want to just chip in here. So my first car, again, was a 2018 Chevy Bolt, and that's the only EV we had, and we went on trips with it. And things were not ideal, but it was absolutely livable. I think we're making too much of the lack of chargers as a big deal. It's not anymore. It might have been back in 2018 when I first got the car, and it was still livable. Now it's even getting better. Every day it's getting better, and I just don't think it's an issue. Sorry.
Okay, no.
You can get the PlugShare app on your phone and it shows you, or the car shows you, so at least it's easy to plan.
Yeah, PlugShare is an app that is universal. It looks at all different chargers. You just decide which chargers you want to, you can do all of them, or you can look for like EVgo or Electrify America, and it'll show you. And you could even use filters, like where are the free chargers? Like there's a free high-speed chargers at Stop and Shop in Hampton Bays, and there's free L2 chargers in the Lumber parking lot, Lumber Lumber Lane parking lot in East Hampton Village. So you can use that filter to find all the free stuff. I don't think it's a problem.
Okay.
I'll add also that the White House announced, and this is as firm as an announcement, but the White House announced that Tesla will be opening up their superchargers to all vehicles, beginning to open them up later this year, and with adapters for non-Tesla vehicles to use that charger network.
Wow. Well, there you go.
Outstanding.
Jason, I wanted to touch on the issue of the grid. And suddenly we're going to be needing more electricity in the grid, which is a very long conversation, but we should at least address it in some form. Do we have the infrastructure to sustain a growing demand on electricity in our area, in the Northeast, in the Northeast as well? And also, out here specifically, we deal with peak demand issues, and we struggle to actually meet demand at the highest points in the summer. I think you're probably best equipped to talk a little bit about how everything is going to be okay.
Yeah, well, beneficial electrification economy-wide is much bigger than just transportation. We have the goal of electrifying buildings as well, and in parallel with decarbonizing transportation, and along with that, all power generation will shift to renewables. So beneficial electrification is I've heard the kind of back of the envelope math that it's a 2x to 3x increase in total electrical capacity to function the entire grid on without fossil fuels, and that's a substantial new investment. However, the opportunities that become available with load shifting and time shifting with batteries proliferating both from vehicles and batteries going into stationary storage in homes and beside renewables allows for some really creative management of that additional load that's coming on. These time of use rates that were brought up earlier is a beginning signal of that, is encouraging behavioral modification that creates grid beneficial behavior. So you add an EV, that's a whole bunch of new load on a local transformer. Maybe your neighbors, 2 or 3 neighbors do as well. Now that transformer on your block is very taxed, but there's a lot of spare capacity overnight. And so the degree to which, and in my efforts with various policy matters, we're working on a commercial tariff reform right now for electric vehicles. We're thinking very seriously about how to develop policy and develop price signals and regulations that encourage not just the accelerated electrification in transportation and buildings, but also how to craft that in a way that is going to be as minimal of an impact to the grid as possible. Not just, and the opportunities aren't just in the form of flexible load, but it's also the ability to feed power back in and provide backup and critical backstopping of renewables with things like electric buildings and electric transportation. So school buses, as a good example, as they become electric, and now New York is under a law that all school buses will be, the procurement of new school buses from 2027 on will be all electric, and so that transformation begins to happen. As electric school buses come online, you've got this bank of batteries that are sitting idle for a large part of the day. They do their 2 runs, their morning and afternoon. They're largely idle in the summer when you've got right now we have a summer peaking grid that could shift to winter with electric buildings. But those electric buses begin to be a source of power, a load shifted source of power. So renewables come in, they fill up those batteries then discharge to aid the grid. And that's more sophisticated grid design that's being contemplated now.
That's not quite a microgrid, but it is getting, it is keeping power more local, which is really important. Super interesting. Yeah.
No. Okay, there we go. When the idea of how we look at how we run our vehicles when you're driving a combustion engine is this idea of watching that gauge go down, go down, go down, because you can't fill up at home. You can't have a gas tank at home. With an EV, you can fill up at home. That whole pressure is, where will I find a gas station? Because I've let this gauge now, for me, get pretty near empty. I wait till the light comes on in my gas-powered car. But when I had my i3, it's a totally different mindset. It's really not comparable. It is if you're doing long distances and you want to plot out your trip, but you also have to think of gas stations then as well. When you could fill up at home overnight, plugged in when peak demand is down, it takes the pressure off your everyday driving to always keep in mind where your gas stations are. And once that light comes on, ooh, now I only have a couple of miles to do something. It doesn't equate like that. It's very freeing. It's much more freeing than it is an obstacle to have your car full of fuel on an EV than when I had gas with my gas-powered car. It's not like you're weighing out the same thing and let me see how it compares. You just go home at night and stick your, like you're plugging in, an appliance, and you stick it, you're plugging it, even if you don't buy any other equipment. You wake up in the morning, boom, you're good. And you just go. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to leave your house to find it. So I just wanted to point that out. Also, I wanted to mention that coming online next year is the wind farm off of the South Fork Wind Farm. So here on the South Fork, we will be getting enough clean energy for about 77,000 homes pushed into our grid. So we're on the front edge of watching this transition happen, where we're going to move away from fossil fuels. So those are just 2 things I wanted to mention. When you're thinking of an electric car, it's a very different experience from hunting around for gas.
Yeah, exactly, spot on. One of the things that we always say in our EV 101 meetings is that how many times have you left your home with a full tank of gas and had to refill it that day if you weren't on a big trip? Most people say never. And there's a statistic, I forget the exact number, but it's somewhere around 80% of all EV owners charge at home. So we're only talking about, again, when I said it's not really a problem with the charging, it's really only a very small percentage of EV owners that have to charge. And there's if there's not enough, not every EV owner goes to these chargers.
Right,
Okay,
but again,
you'll have to forgive the joke, but if the wind is blowing when we have the wind farm going, I'll just know, I got to go home and charge my car. I want to keep that power to myself. So that's that'll be the thing. Like, oh, it's windy, I got to go.
So the fact that we're actually helping the planet, I know it's just not icing on the cake. Yeah. It's actually the foundation of our future life that yes. we're engaged in here. So, we haven't really spent a lot of time talking about that advantage, but the fact of the matter is that we're moving in a way as a world into a future that we want to slow down. And having an EV and using an EV is going to not only eliminate immediately the pollution in the air that is making us ill, but it's also going to make a life for our children. So I vote that we do this now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, does someone have the data points around the carbon footprint of owning an electric vehicle versus just your average, what the average is on internal combustion engine vehicles?
One moment. Leonard does have his hand up. I don't know if it's
okay.
to your question, but he does have his hand up.
Unmute yourself, Leonard.
Leonard, could you unmute?
Yes, I'm very sorry. Maybe I can wait for my answer for this, but I think it's appropriate to raise it right now, this question now. I have a very angry neighbor who quite often rants about the fact that we're raping the earth, the oceans, for the materials that are going into the batteries that we're using for our electric vehicles and any other device that uses lithium batteries. So I hope at some point we'll be able to discuss that and have an answer to that question.
Dan touched on it earlier, but we can go back at it, sure.
95% of the batteries are being recycled.
Yeah, well, the battery's being recycled, but realize that I think he was saying there's only 1% of cars in New York are EVs, so you have to, those other cars all have to turn to EVs, and batteries have to come from somewhere. There are newer battery technologies, like one is lithium iron, which is a lot, it's not friendly to the environment, but it's a lot more friendly than having to take out the cobalt and everything else for the current lithium-ion batteries. So things are getting better. There's also technologies called supercaps. These are capacitors. A capacitor is not a battery, but it still stores electrical energy. And so a lot of companies are starting to put in supercaps into the car. So when you now these cars, all EVs, regeneratively brake. In other words, they turn their motors into generators to slow the car down. Now that energy has to go someplace, and when it goes back into the battery, you get a charging loss. So what happens is some of these car makers are putting in supercaps. Supercaps have no loss. The electricity just goes into this, let's call it a bucket without getting totally into it. It just goes into this bucket, and then you use that energy to accelerate when you take off. So that's going to reduce the amount of batteries that a car needs. But yeah, everything is an evolution. This is, we were talking about the electrical grid. It's an evolution. When we first came out with refrigerators, that was a big problem with the electrical grid. When we first came out with central air conditioners, oh my God, that was a big electrical grid problem. Now we have EVs, and oh my God, it's another electrical grid problem. We will survive.
Len's question, though, was about the mining of materials for the actual construction of the battery. We haven't actually talked about that. I'm sort of curious. Does anyone have a knowledge about that?
There's nothing's going to happen soon. That's the real.
So the actual, so the making of batteries for batteries, period, but particularly these big batteries for cars is.
Yeah, the first thing that's going to happen is the materials that are coming from Africa, where children are going down into mines to get it. That's the first thing that's being addressed. Lithium iron does some of that, and it's just. I mean, I'm an electrical engineer. I'm in this industry. It's an evolution. It's going to be slow, and I hate to give the bad news, but we're going to continue to rip apart the earth to get this stuff. We rip apart the earth to get coal. We rip apart the earth to get oil.
Okay. We did leave a few gaps here. Electric things break. Can mechanics address these issues? I mean, can you take your car to your local mechanic if it needs something? I mean, what are the things that happen, and can you maintain it locally?
I go to the BMW dealer, so.
Yeah,
I
of course, can only address the
Because you go to the. Yeah.
Tesla has a warranty, and the warranty doesn't allow you to take it to anybody. to have something fixed, unless it's a tire issue. And consequently, you call Tesla service, and Tesla service shows up at your house.
And you have 2 Teslas. Yep. Francesca has a Leaf, and Len has a Chevy Bolt. So perhaps you guys, Len or Francesca, what do you do?
Well, I haven't had the problem because it's so low maintenance. But when my radio went, I went back to the dealership, but of course it was under warranty. I think this is another issue of evolution, because there are very few mechanics who actually know how to work on these vehicles, and the vehicles are very dangerous if you don't know how to work on them. There are issues around fires, so a lot of people don't want to work on them. So this is going to be something, it's just going to have to evolve as more and more people get EVs. More repair stations will probably, come up. At this point, I think the dealership is where you need to go.
Got it. Interestingly enough, you mentioned fires. Sorry to cut you off, Len, but we're running out of time, and I just want to mention the issue of safety. Actually, one of the things that I've heard about EVs is that in accidents, they are safer, it's my understanding, because there's no gasoline in them, so they have a less of a chance of exploding. What are the safety issues around EVs?
The top safe cars on the planet right now are EVs. I mean, they're very, very difficult to roll. So all the NHTS...
Because they're so heavy.
Yeah. So on the bottom, you could think of it like a skateboard, like the whole car is on this heavy battery-laden skateboard. So it's really hard to roll it. All the NHTSA testing for these EVs are just going through the roof. They're the safest cars out there. And I shared with you through email the statistics for fires. And there were thousands of internal combustion engine fires every year, and there was like 52 EV fires. They don't go on fire. It's just that since EVs are new, if they do go on fire, it gets into the news.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sam, are there any questions?
Yeah, we do have people on the chat. So someone said, I came a little late, but what's the best, least expensive electric car for me to buy?
Good question.
Chevy Bolt.
Chevy Bolt?
I think it's the Hyundai, actually.
Hyundai, the Kona.
Yeah.
In that
You
region.
guys would be the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chevy Bolt is one...
Chevy Bolt with a B. That's they just announced that 2023 is at $27,000. That's the lowest cost. No, it's actually not the lowest cost. There's also a
Nissan Leaf.
Nissan Leaf.
Nissan Leaf is higher than the Bolt.
It's more expensive.
Yes,
okay.
but there's another name, and I'm very sorry I've forgotten it, but it only goes 50 miles. So why bother?
The
Chevy Bolt.
Hyundai is 34,000, and that's a 258 mile range.
And it was top rated by Consumer Report.
40,000, and that's a 232 mile range. Those are, and the Mini Cooper, good Lord, that's $29,000, and it's a 114 mile range. So that's really for at home. The Mazda is 33,000, and that's a 100 mile range. The Nissan Leaf is 27,000, and that's 149 miles. So, I mean, they're definitely looking to find ways to bring the prices down.
No, the Nissan Leaf Plus has a rated range of 219, but when that's only in the winter time for me. Now, when I go out now, my range is like 250 to 252. So the Leaf Plus is
$27,000 Nissan.
I just want to see if there are any other further questions from the online audience.
Right, and so what do our EV owners typically pay on a charge cost?
Oh, that's what I was saying. Like, I think mine is only about $20 or $30 per month.
Per month. So, so what is one charge cost you? I guess Tesla owners. That's
So if you wanted, assume the last time I used a supercharger, the cost was 28 cents per kilowatt hour, and my car has a 100 kilowatt battery. So if I showed up at the supercharger completely empty, I would get 100 kilowatts times 28 cents. It would be $28. And my car goes 371 miles. So $28 to go 371 miles.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
when I
and-
charge publicly, I think I paid $8 for the
And-
charge.
And my fast charger Tesla would be $25 for 300 miles.
Len, how about your Bolt?
Well, I hardly ever need a full charge, so I really can't say. But typically, if let's say I'm about half full or so, yeah, it costs me around $10 to recharge at my. I have an apartment in New York, and the building has a level 2 charger. It's an EV Connect charger, and I think about $10 or so for half the charge.
Are there any other questions?
I think most of them that we've kind of already answered, but if anyone has any questions that they think of after the fact or that maybe we didn't fully answer, definitely feel free to call the town's Natural Resources Department and we'll get you those answers, or you can send an email to that email address. Also, I think with LTV, we have a slide up with some other resources that people can take a look at, and we can circulate that over email to anyone that signed up.
And do we have time to conclude with that 4-minute video, or have we burned through all our time?
We are at 5:32, but if it's okay with LTV to still run it, then I guess
There's
that'd be
a
great.
4-minute public service video that actually answers a lot of questions that were addressed in the conversation today. Super helpful. So we're going to finish with that. I'd like to thank everyone who showed up online and in person, and thank the panelists and Kate for being here, and Carl Grossman, the columnist for the press newspapers. Thanks for being here, Carl. So thank you all.
Do you ever think you should buy more silver? I'm sorry, it's the wrong script. Can I take that again? I'm an electric car. I'm here to tell you about Tom Papa.
Resetting.
Hi, I'm Tom Papa. I'm here to tell you about electric cars. They're like other cars, just quieter and betterer. And I can't really see these cue cards. You know, I don't really need them. Can I just tell them why I bought an electric car myself?
Please.
Hi, I'm Tom Papa, comedian and your best friend. Do you hear that? No, you don't, because I'm driving electric. Oh, as a father of too many kids, I can't get enough of the peace and quiet. It's really one of the many reasons back in 2014 I decided to buy electric. Like fatherhood, it was a pretty daunting decision, but unlike fatherhood, this one really paid off. And not only do I feel really great about driving electric and saving the environment, man, I look cool as... All right, I'm just gonna get right to it. I'm gonna admit it. Before I went electric, I had doubts. What if I wanna drive really far? What if I can't figure out the charging? What are all the cool kids gonna say about me in school? And these are questions that really smart consumers have. The good news is the answers are super easy. You want to drive far away. All right, I asked this too before going electric. Let me be the first to give you the good news. You don't. The average person drives less than 30 miles a day. That's a little bit more than a marathon. And some very motivated people do that by foot. We call them show-offs. Most electric vehicles go between 150 to 280 miles on a single charge. So you can go and come back and go again and come back again and pass that guy running the marathon and honk your horn. You really want to drive far away. Okay, I get it. Sometimes you do want a road trip. I am all about it. Get your snacks, go. Do not fear. Newer EVs can go over 300 miles on a single charge. Plug-in hybrids have ranges of up to 650 miles. That's like going from Washington, D.C. to Bangor, Maine, which is a route nobody ever wants to drive, ever. But if you do, good news, There are public charging stations all across the Northeast. You're gonna do it, and you're gonna get bit by mosquitoes when you get there. Thinking you're gonna misspend money is like thinking you're not gonna laugh at one of my new stand-up specials. It's not gonna happen. I mean, driving electric has lower fuel costs, lower operating costs, and practically zero maintenance costs. And the cherry on top, when you purchase an electric car, you're gonna save thousands off the EV rebates and tax incentives alone. Which is why I'm standing here today in front of this trifecta of stylish electric vehicles. EVs, as we call them in the biz. These are just some of the options that are available to you when you make the surprisingly easy transition to electric. There's a lot more, of course, but apparently 3 is the limit for a comedian. There's everything out there now, though. Sports cars to minivans, all electric to plug-in hybrids, stylish SUVs to versatile crossovers, all from the automakers you already know and love. That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? Yeah. You know what would be cool? If I can get some sunglasses. That would be really cool. If you need more information, go to driveelectricus.com for everything you need to start your electric journey. The future's bright, baby. So bright, I could really use sunglasses. Who's in charge?